Welcome to Built with Purpose. I am Chris Fay, and this is the show where vision meets execution and leadership leaves a legacy. From design studios to innovation hubs and product lines to skylines, we meet the people building more than great companies. They're creating culture, driving impact, and shaping what's next. These are the stories and strategies behind how the world gets built with purpose. Hey everybody, welcome to Built with Purpose. Today I am excited for a number of reasons. Number one is I've got my buddy John Uprichard here. John and I have known each other actually for a number of years, but the other cool thing is that I always love to have CEOs and visionaries that live in the same town as I do. So John actually is a native here of Greenville, South Carolina. He's sitting in his office about probably 2 miles from me. John, welcome to the show, my friend.
Yeah. Thanks, man. It's good to be here.
You know, we talk a lot in the technology space and kind of engineering, construction, people that are building the world. And so what's really cool about having John on the show is John is in the people business. So no matter what your business is, if you're a leader of teams or organizations, it's all about people. And so John is the CEO of Find Great People, better known as FGP here locally. And so John, man, I'm really kind of excited to dive in. As you and I were warming up earlier, we were talking about AI and people, and so there's a ton of questions that I know that we can get into. But first off, just give us give us a little bit of a high level, man. Give an introduction to yourself. Sure. And what you've been doing. I asked you before about you were a naval officer, and I'm really excited to hear about that. And just give us the high level, man.
Yeah. Well, I always like to say, sort of first and foremost is I'm the husband of Chris Uprichard because that is my boss, my CEO.
Yeah.
And that's who I work for.
Yeah.
No, so listen, I'm married, about 4 adult children, and and I work at FGP, and we're in the people space. And it's interesting, Chris, because about half our business is in South Carolina. Half of our business is across the country. And I think a lot of people just associate our brand with like maybe a staffing company or recruiting company. Mm-hmm. And the one thing I share with our clients and a lot of the folks who work with them, like, we do a really bad job telling our story because we're so much more than that. I mean, we do recruiting. So if you think about, the employment life cycle, so like the life cycle for your employees, companies spend a lot of time hiring, and we have parts of our business that specialize in areas of hiring, and that could be at the executive level. It could be in a more specialized sort of individual contributor role, and then it could be sort of staff levels role. And probably, I would say, I don't know, man, probably 75% of our business, 80% of our business is around sort of hiring. Once you hire people and you bring them onto the team, and it's really about integration and then development. So through our consulting business, we do a lot of work around developing and how do you grow your people? How do you get more out of your existing team? And then sometimes, unfortunately, you have to transition people, and we have a group that actually works with organizations on transitioning employees and really helping sort of get people to that soft landing and help shape a path forward. So if you think about sort of that life cycle of an employee, we have people solutions at different levels that are specialized to work with companies across the life cycle of all their people.
Gotcha. So, and tell me how you got started in the business. I mean, you talked a little bit. I'm pretty sure you bought a small company, but then started obviously the FGP brand. I mean, tell me about how you got into this business.
So I wish I could tell you that it got in sort of with this great intent and strategy, but you mentioned naval officer. So I was coming back from a deployment in the Persian Gulf, and I had resigned my commission, and I had moved my wife Chris here to Greenville back in '99, and then deployed to the Gulf for about 6 or 7 months. At the time, we had our son Matthew. He was, I think, it's like a year old. And moved her in a rental house here. I'm on the John F. Kennedy deployed. I remember we didn't have a lot of communication back then, no cell phones. but we did have sat phones. And I remember I did get to call her, and she's like, "Hey, by the way, I bought a house." And I'm like, "Okay, great." Uh, but
Better keep working. That's the job
yeah,
security,
so
man.
I come back from the Persian Gulf to, to Greenville, and I just started looking for a job, just like just like everyone else looking for a job. And I tell folks that, you know, you usually don't find recruiting. Recruiting sort of finds you. I went to work for a large national company, and about a week or two into it, I'm like, hey, this is really unique. I think it's sort of sales, but it's like HR, and that's how I got into the business. I got out of the military because I had lived in 5 places in 8 years. With this national company, they wanted me to move, and they had asked me to move a few times. At the end of the day, probably divine intervention
Yep.
that I met my partner T. Hooper, and who was already sort of in process looking at a small executive search firm. And I got to, be part of that and buying the company. And that was in 2002. It was, I mean, you think about 2002, that sort of tells you I'm old. I'm not that young anymore. But it was, it was right after 9/11.
Right.
Right after 9/11, we were in a recession. We're in a variable revenue model, and we're in the apparel textile space. We did some technology. And what that all means is, we had great people. That's the one thing we knew. We had incredible people. And we said, hey, if we have great people, we can pretty much accomplish anything. But we knew we had to re-engineer the business pretty quickly. So we started that re-engineering process of the core existing business. And that led us to in '03 to rebrand the company to FGP, Find Great People. And Brains on Fire, it's a great story. Brains on Fire did our rebrand. And Mike Goot and Robin Phillips, who sort of helped found Brains on Fire. And I can remember talking to Mike Goot, and I'm like, hey, we got like 20 grand. That's it. And I think he like
Need
fell
a
out of his
name
chair.
and a website.
Like, he's like, yeah, like discovery on rebrands like that much. I'm like, what if we just
Yeah.
pay y'all up front? And they did it. And the cool thing was that our rebrand from Phillips International to Find Great People FGP was actually recognized for the Rebrand 100, one of the top 100 rebrands in the country, which
Awesome.
was pretty cool. And then we sort of took off. And again, I really sort of call myself the accidental entrepreneur. I don't think I'm that smart, and and a lot of times I think opportunity finds you. You just got to open your eyes to see that the opportunity's there. We got into the staffing business because we had a client, Corporate Bilo. They called us. We had done some work with them on the IT side. I had worked with them at my previous company, and they said, "Hey, we need like 8, folks for an accounting project." And my response was, "Well, we don't do that." And they said, "Okay, well, you have 2 weeks to figure it out. We need them, this Friday."
Yep.
And so we figured it out.
Thank you for not offering that service, but you're going to offer that service,
Right.
and you got to figure it out.
Yeah, FIO, figure it out, which is really the cool thing is that's still how we operate today. And I think it really sort of defines who we are. It makes us really agile.
Yep.
But man, a year later, we had over 100 people out on billing, and we were rocking and rolling. Then, sort of fast forward to 2000, and I think it's 2005. Dunlop Slazenger, so golf balls. So we did work with them on the recruiting side. They were closing their golf ball manufacturing plant in Westminster, South Carolina, and their CFO had become a good friend, and he said, "Hey, we're going to shut down the plant, and we're shutting it down, and we're transitioning all the employees, and we want to provide outplacement for them. We want to make sure we take really great care of them."
Yeah, that's cool.
And of course, the response was, "Hey, we don't do that." And he said, "Okay, well," he said, "you got a few months to figure it out." And he said, "By the way, we want you to do it, and you can't do anything at the facility because we're shutting the facility down, we're transitioning the employees, and then 2 days later, we're closing on the sale, we're selling the facility. So we ended up in Westminster, South Carolina, we went into an old furniture store and made like a makeshift, like career center.
Holy cow.
And we helped over 300 people, sort of, move forward to different roles in their career.
Wow.
So we're helping companies back to what I talked about, this employee life cycle. We're helping companies hire. We're helping companies transition, but there was all that real estate in the middle. And we have people, consistently, companies saying, hey, we need help with development of our people. We have these people issues. And I think that's where we, as an organization, we're confident in what we know and what we're really good at. We're also confident in what we know and what we're not good at. And that's a good thing, because at that time we said, we probably need to look at an acquisition. So we acquired a company, Align HR, in end of 07, sort of 08. And it was great from us. That was a strategic acquisition for us. It was going to really sort of give us solutions across the whole life cycle. But I think the one thing that we underestimated was how different the business model was. And like for a few years, we're like, utilization rates, billable hours.
Yeah.
Like,
what does that mean?
Like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And it took us a few years to figure it out. But again, I think it comes back to why we were bullish on buying Phillips International in 02. We knew we could figure it out because we knew we had great people. And so fast forward to where we are today, that's one of the fastest growing parts of our business. And we're growing 25-30% a year in that part of our business. And we just had our company meeting and did our quarterly business reviews with our different business units. And that business, we served 178 clients in the first quarter.
Wow, that's awesome.
So we've gone from like a company that maybe had in 08 had like 15, 20 active clients to in the first quarter we served 178 clients, which is
man, that's crazy. Do you so like the when you said the figure it out FIO, I thought about FAFO, F around, find out, which is, I guess, probably a sister slogan. But so how do you, I'm trying to think about, like, in your business, you've got somebody that's coming to work for you, and you're kind of telling them about like the kind of core values and culture and kind of setting the expectations, like that kind of figure it out methodology, like rings for me, because that's what I do. I'm like, hey, just go sell it and we'll figure out how to deliver it. But then you've got people that are on the exact opposite. Like they're like, well, I'm not ready to necessarily take that step until I really know how the program is built. And I will say it's probably good to have a balance of those individuals. You don't want a whole team of people just going like gangbusters, and you don't want a whole bunch of people. But like, do you talk about that? Does that like figure it out methodology kind of get in your talk track when you're hiring internally for you or talking about your culture?
It does. It does. I mean, you can't have everyone be, sort of the FIO mentality. You got to have, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, it's just like companies are like families, people have to be complementary. It's like, it's like marriages. They work when people are complementary, and you got to have people who have the vision and the creativity to get, to be able to see what could be possible. But man, they've got to be complemented and have someone right there with them.
Yep.
Who is structured and can deliver and finish.
Yep.
So it's like the vision, the creativity, how do we make it work with the people that actually truly can execute and make it work. Yep. So for us, one of the things we talk about is if you look at our brand, our G is red, and that represents our three Gs. And those are our three Gs are sort of our values, which one is great. So we really believe that for us as an organization, great companies, that starts with us. So we've got to have great people to have a great company. And then in turn, we'll be able to help build great companies. The second G is growth. And so we're a growth company. We think about growth all the time. We talk about growth all the time. And we also are very upfront with people that growth starts at the edge of your comfort zone. So when you come here, you know, we're going to make you, you know, lean in because we're going to make you uncomfortable. It is not uncommon for us to tap someone on the shoulder and say, hey, by the way, what do you think about this role? And usually the response is, yeah, I'm not thinking about that role. And they're like, we know, but we are. And, and it's like, and really sort of pivoting to where we really see someone who, it's like we see someone who maybe in a role that we're like, hey, they're a great person. They'll be great with us, but maybe that's a job. And we're like, hey, we think we can move you here and you can have a career. So do you want to have a career or do you want to have a job? Because we think you can have a career with us if we put you in this new swim lane.
Love that.
Yeah.
We were talking about the kind of getting comfortable, getting uncomfortable methodology. And like, that's where growth comes from. And, you know, you're never going to grow if you just continue to do the same things over and over and not challenge yourself. Right. I mean, you got to put yourself outside of that comfort zone.
Yeah. And our last G is gratitude. You know, we get to do this versus we have to do it. And I think gratitude is something that really aligns with our purpose. Our purpose is build great companies that impact lives. And we really believe that we get to help people with employment. And we think about what's one thing that impacts a family more than anything else. And that is, you know, it's employment. So we're grateful that we get to, you know, to impact lives. And man, it's cool. We get paid to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. I mean, just have, you know, I've dealt and worked with your company over the years, and you know, I think your culture and your people definitely stand out. You know what I mean? And especially if you're in the people business and you're selling recruiting and you're selling these services and consulting and outplacement and all the things that you do, like if your core is not strong, it's going to be hard for you to make anybody else's core strong. So there's probably I don't want to say even like an even more like amplified pressure. Right. But like you all have to have your business on such great lock with such great people, because that's what people are buying. You know, they're buying a company that they likely look up to and respect and feel, or maybe kind of at the pinnacle or leading the way, kind of the beacon of light on the hill as it relates to people and culture. And I mean, I know that I felt that in your business, but is that ever a pressure for you to think about, like, God, we've got to make sure, like, internally we've got our stuff right because it's us that we're selling to our customers?
Yeah, I think for us, it is, we have to continually improve our fitness as an organization. You know, everyone works out, we work out to, you know, become healthier, improve our fitness. I think we look at it as organizational fitness because, to your point, people expect us to be fit. And so the one thing that we focus on is how do we continuously improve how we work? And that can be how we work with clients, you know, how we work with candidates, but more importantly, how do we work together? How do we work with technology?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I think the other thing too, that we also realize is, for us, we try to really instill in our team that we're leaders. A lot of the organizations we work with, you might work with a hiring manager that has maybe hired 15 people in their career. And this could be one of the, you know, someone who's been with our organization for 3 or 4 years. I mean, they've probably hired, you know, been part of processes to hire like 500 to 1,000 people. Mm-hmm. So with that, they're a subject matter expert. But I think the one thing that we recognize and try to instill in the team is our job, you know, leadership isn't a position, it's a process. And our job is to lead people through the process, use our expertise and really lead them in sort of a consultative way. And that's something that we just continuously, you know, remind our team. I'm like, hey, lead them. They're looking for us to lead.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, which means we got to provide direction on where we need to, how we get to the outcome. Then we've got to keep stakeholders aligned, client stakeholders, candidate stakeholders, you know, and then we've got to know and really sort of set the level of expectation around engagement that we need from all these stakeholders throughout the process.
So who in your, I mean, is inside of your organization? So first off, I love the fitness. I've got a great buddy. He's actually a good friend of yours as well, that talks about like organizational fitness and financial fitness inside of the business, man. And I love that. We actually had coffee, Thomas, I had coffee with him this morning. We always have Friday morning coffees with the boys. And he said the word fitness again. And like, and so I've heard it come from you as well. I love that. So like inside of the business, is it just is it the core executive leadership team that's responsible for setting that? Do you have somebody that just kind of owns day to day to make sure that as you're going across the company, this kind of lead them methodology, the fitness is in place? Is that you? You know, how do you have somebody kind of own and make sure that's put in through the business?
One thing I can tell you, the role I play in it is very different today than it was years ago. No, it is, I don't think it's really one person. I think the one thing we have realized as we've grown, and this is where my partner T is so valuable, because he's like, hey, how do you get it so the business can scale past you? It's not really dependent upon one individual. So it really comes back to building out sort of a leadership and management structure in our business. Mm-hmm. So we have an executive team, but then we have really, really strong next level leaders. And we're consistently looking at sort of how do we develop our own people. We actually pulled someone out of the business probably about 3 or 4 years ago, who was one of our top level producers. And all she does is work on developing people within our team.
That's
and we
awesome.
look at that as such a great investment. The other thing that we've also done is, and we do this with clients, we have created sort of next gen leadership programs that are maybe 1 or 2 year programs where you take a cohort of maybe 8 to 10 people, you put them through the program, and you wash, rinse, and repeat that, every few years. And then the compounding effect is, man, now we have like 20 to 30 leaders. People have been through that program who understand the platform from which we lead and sort of, what we expect as far as elevating and caring for people. And we actually have one of those in place. So we have our second program. We'll finish it up probably in about 6 months. And now as an organization that has over 100 people, we'll have almost like 15 to 20 people have gone through that program.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and the cool thing about that is when you have a program like that, I think a lot of times people think, okay, hey, what's next? And what's next is, it could be maybe promotion to a different role, but it could be, hey, we're just going to pack on more responsibility for you laterally. So we're trying to build capabilities and capacity for you to even take on more within your existing role.
There was something that I read a couple of years ago about, and we had talked about it internally, but this idea of leadership. And oftentimes people think that leadership is your job title, like a manager, executive, president, vice president, whatever, director role is. But this one was, leadership is really more of a state of mind. So you could be leading a team, or you could just be leading yourself. Right. And so if you look at it less of a title and more of a state of mind, it changes your concept of leadership development. And, what are the skill sets that it takes to, first off, be able to lead yourself, but then secondarily to potentially lead other people in the future. And I was a really interesting article that I read and kind of switched my thinking a little bit, because, you talk about leading, and I love just lead by example. And there's just part of things that I talk about a lot in my life, but it was just interesting kind of thinking about that as a state of mind. So to your point, we want to put you this leadership development program. We might not be putting anybody underneath you. We might just be asking you to be in charge of more things, and maybe just leading yourself.
Yeah. Well, and a great way to sort of look at leadership, and we actually just talked about this at our last company meeting, is shopping carts. All right. So once you think about, you go to Target, you go to Buy Low, or you go to Publix, whatever, you got a shopping cart, you got to either leave it by the car, you put it in the corral, or you take it back inside. And it's always interesting to ask people, hey, what do you do, man? And it's always such a high percentage of folks. Well, first of all, no one ever says car. And
Right.
when we ask a group, I'm always like, all right, there's at least one or two people that really you probably do leave it by the car every once in a while,
Yep.
and you just don't want to admit it. But a high percentage of people, when we ask this question, as it relates to the mindset and heart of a leader, is the corral. So they put it in the corral, and and then also, a smaller percentage will take it back inside. So I'm always fascinated. I always ask, I'm like, all right, so, hey, whoever put it in the corral, let's talk about that. Why do you put it in the corral? And the answers are typically, well, it's convenient. It saves time. You know, I'm close to it. It's easy.
Mm-hmm.
And and then they're like, well, that's, sometimes they're like, well, that's what they build the corral for. It's like, yeah, so at a minimum expectation is, yeah, they want you to put it back in the corral. But then you ask people who, take it inside, and you're like, all right, okay, we got this like small group of folks who take it inside. Like, why do you do it? And the answer is always fascinating because it reflects sort of the heart and mindset. And what you hear is, well, that's where I got it. I got it. So I gotta finish. I gotta take it back to where I got it. I gotta sort of follow through.
Mm-hmm.
And then also they're like, hey, if I take it back inside, yeah, I mean, it takes me an extra, 30 seconds, maybe a minute. But they're like, but that's one less cart that, one of the kids, you see the folks at like Costco or Publix, like
Pushing this.
38 carts, and they have these
Right.
big straps, and they're like, it just makes their job a little bit easier. And
Yeah.
it's so fascinating because when it comes to, Mike, I always say, okay, so when you take the cart back inside, do they give you 5 cents off or 5% off your next grocery order? They're like, no, there's no recognition, there's no incentive. You just do it because because it's sort of it's really sort of going to that extra mile. And I think leadership, and I think, I think probably what defines a brand is really the moments that are unmeasured,
Mm-hmm.
and really unnoticed. So it's
Yep.
like, as a leader, the heart and mind is, are you willing to lead and do things without recognition?
So is that I'm just curious, like when you have those conversations, is that an aha moment and then people can begin to develop that? Or do you think there's an aspect of wiring that are in individuals?
I think it totally gets people's attention, because the thing that I really try to stress as a leader, how you do the little things is how you do everything.
Yep.
And um, and every time that we use that with people and we use that with teams, two things happen. One is, and this is our consulting business, and we had it even with our employees. I mean, we actually had one of our coworkers the other day, after we did the company meeting, was at the grocery store, took a video of taking the cart back inside and sent it to his team.
That's awesome.
Because that's the other thing too. Sometimes someone's got to, like, get it on your radar to then also make
you think about it.
the mindfulness, and say the
Yep.
mindset. And you know what? I mean, listen, I used to take it to corral, man, all the time. And you know what? Now I take it back inside.
Yes, it could be a learned behavior.
Yeah.
Now the trick is, do you then translate to taking it to the corral, getting the whole stack of carts, and bringing the whole stack of carts inside? That would be like, if you had somebody that did that, like, you're like, all right, man, you got the A+ in leadership school.
If I was in my 40s, I would probably do that. But now that I'm in like my mid to late 50s, I ain't doing that. I'd probably throw my pack out.
Yeah. Or you could add the incremental. I'm just thinking about like the incremental steps that says, I'm going to take my cart, and I'm going to take whoever the guy or girl that left their cart in the parking lot. I'm going to grab that one as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can kind of see this levels, but no, I think it's interesting. I mean, I think, it's a good question and a good comment to say, can these things are they just how you're wired, or are they things that can be learned or reminded? And, I think that's where, whether it be conversations, like having these conversations with your team or with a leadership group, or reading an article or listening to a podcast. It's just like there's these things. We have so many things that are going on in our life, and it's, especially in leadership, it's hard, man. Like there's a lot of things, and sometimes you need to just have those little, I don't remember what you just called it, but kind of like those moments, those little reminders of, oh yeah, that is something I need to do. Now I can start taking action on it. But I feel like that's what it helps. You just have to have the conversation, right? And then people are like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. I'll do that next time.
Yeah. And I think it is. So things can be learned, but also what we find is things are just contagious.
Yeah.
And, so as we look at that, one of the things that we also do when we ask that question, it's always fascinating to see from a leadership team, they'll say, okay, well, hey, 70% of us take the carts to the corral, 30% take it inside. Then the question is, okay, our team needs to, in our organization needs to experience our leaders the same way. So we've either got to agree, we're either going to pivot and make a commitment to take the cart back inside and do the things that aren't recognized for our team that we're not getting paid for. And it's the same thing. We're going to do the things that we're not getting paid for by a customer or client, but we're doing it because it's just who we are, because it's sort of the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the compelling question is, all right, so how do you move forward? And then how do you get to 100%? And then translate that concept of the shopping cart to then what it really, the leadership things, principles in their business.
Yeah. Well, I love that, man. And it's such because you can put yourself in that situation and just think about that experience. Because I would say, on the average, I'm probably the corral guy. I'm never the parking lot guy, but I'm definitely the corral guy. And I think it's probably speed and convenience. You're like, oh, it's right there. It's meant for. I'm going to go ahead and push it. But it's funny sometimes if there's a decision point for me, if I'm like halfway to the corral and halfway to the store, or close, I'll default to the store. You know what I mean? But it's interesting but how to put that into like our own daily experiences.
Yeah. So my story is, next time you're you got a shopping cart in your hand.
Yep.
You're gonna be thinking about taking it back inside.
What I'm gonna do? I'm gonna grab two. I'm gonna grab two because I got to make up for lost time. I've been the corral guy for too long. It's time for me to go make up. So.
In that time, man, where you're like, you are pressed for time and you put it in the corral, you're gonna be thinking about it. You're gonna be like, man, I had to get to where I had to get, I didn't take it back inside. And I think that's the thing, is that mindfulness and also the awareness when, hey, I just did something that was convenient and easy, because listen, we're not perfect. But it's that mindfulness and awareness.
Yep. No, it's fine. I think about it where it happens for me the most, and I'm not saying it's a pet peeve of mine at all, but maybe it is a little bit, is when you go to the bathroom and there's two things. And I'm not going to get too deep in this conversation. One is where somebody has taken the last square of toilet tissue off of the roller and has left the roller on the little thing, the little hook. So I was like, what? You took the last thing, just change out the stuff. And then the other one is the people that wash their hands, and then they dry their hands with a paper towel, and they throw it at the wastebasket, and they miss it, and it falls to the floor, and they walk out. And so here at the office, like I would hope we got relatively clean people. So I'll change out the tissue thing, and I'll grab the thing off the floor. But my boys actually gave me a hard time. We were out at a concert one time, and you're in this like huge arena or whatever. We go to the bathroom together. I think they had the dryers and the stuff. I grabbed a paper towel, and I saw somebody's paper towels on the floor, and I grabbed that one and I put it in the wastebasket. And my boys, like, they let me have it. They're like, Dad, what are you doing, man? Like, that's on the floor at a public restroom and whatever. I'm like, man, it just drives me crazy. People need to throw the trash can.
Yeah, that's cool. They'll remember that.
Yeah. They're like, my dad's nasty, but he does the right thing from time to time. So, well, I want to pivot just a bit, because I think one of the questions I've got for you, just kind of diving into your space is just, we talked a little bit about kind of AI and technology and just how the industry is changing. And I just, it absolutely impacts individuals. And we've got people in our company, we've talked about on the pod before, it's just like that, there's this fear, right? And of AI either replacing jobs or taking certain tasks or, really augmenting and changing. And, you guys talk to a ton of businesses that are out there, and you probably are obviously talking to a lot of people that are applying for jobs, whether they're inbound or outbound. And I'm just kind of curious right now, in the general sense of what you see in y'all's business, is this topic huge? Are the people that are looking for jobs, are they finding challenges with needing AI skill sets? Are companies asking for this? Like, how do you see it in your space? How is AI, the conversation, working just kind of in the blanket customer that you're working with?
Yeah, that's a great question. It is. So I think one of the things that we see is that, number one, companies are lagging, employees are leading. And, so, companies, as far as strategies and programs around AI, they're not moving fast enough. People are using AI that the companies are providing, but man, it's almost like BYO AI. People are bringing their own AI to work because they're like, hey, I can do this. I can get my job done faster. So it's interesting because at some point, companies have got to get caught up. And, I think the reality is the bureaucracy just sort of slows down, or just maybe competing interests for time. The other thing too is we've also seen, I think, this sort of fear factor that AI is going to replace jobs. I think people have sort of worked through that and have accepted that AI is here, and that what it means is, instead of artificial intelligence, it's almost like augmented intelligence. So they know that they have to learn how to use AI, and it's going to reshape their role. The other thing that's also interesting is that people don't think they use AI, and they don't realize how much they do use AI, throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you show them, you're like, hey, right now, man, you go to Google and you type something and you're using AI. They're like, really? So I think I would say that's sort of high level, but then you go down to sort of companies as we work with organizations. And like we were talking about before, I think people start with, how do we use AI to really optimize how we work in our business? Mm-hmm. So I think the starting point is we have existing, systems and technology platforms, and a lot of those technology platforms and those systems now have AI sort of bolt-ons. And so everyone is automatically, the reflex is to buy some of those bolt-ons. So what we see is probably, I would say, about maybe half of the companies we work with have AI assisted processes.
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing to look at. And that's driven by really those bolt-ons with their existing systems and tools. I think the second part of AI that we're starting to see companies start to think about a little bit is low value work and high value work. So going in and saying, okay, we have these certain core roles. How do we identify and inventory the low value work? And then how do we also identify and inventory high value work? For two different reasons. Low value work, number one, so that they can go in and say, okay, now we have sort of our target list of how we want AI. We want to use AI for this low value work. But then once we do that, then we're going to shift our team to more knowledge-based work, which we consider to be high value work. But then we have to build capabilities with folks on how to sort of really deliver in that high value work. So I think that's what we're seeing working in the business. Mm-hmm. And then I think, we're also seeing some folks, think about, okay, now how do we use AI to help us really sort of drive strategy and optimization on the business? And that's where I think the data lake comes in, and getting LLMs and, pouring everything you can into that data lake and training the LLMs, we're seeing very few companies there. At
Yep.
least in the, especially in I would say sort of mid cap to small business, we're seeing companies, just in that sort of first phase of bolt-ons. But then I would say we don't even, I think people are starting to move towards low value work and high value work.
Yep. Yeah. Are you seeing? Do you see? I mean, just there's probably interesting like the hiring process of what you all are a part of. Are you seeing people, because you talked about maybe the employees are moving faster than the companies are, and I think that makes great sense. It's easy for an employee to kind of get into the AI space, very little friction, start playing. Like, are you seeing, are the resumes being added to about all the AI skills? Are the searchers looking for people that have those AI skills? Are you seeing like positions that people that are either AI architects or leaders in the AI space? Like, are you just seeing that proliferate more through these conversations as well?
We're seeing companies specifically ask for it sometimes, but then sometimes it's more of an additive where if they have it,
Yep.
it would be great. But I think what we see is over time, it's not going to be, an additive. It's going to be a requirement. And because I think, like we were talking about before we jumped on, you know, it really comes back to almost like talent density, which is how do we have more high performing people but we have less people. So our ratio of high performing to performing and underperforming continues to grow. So we actually have less people, but we pay them more. So we have retention, but they're using tools like AI to be able to do more
Yeah.
as well.
That was it'd be interesting to even monetize that over time, because we've talked about that in concept, is like, if we're able to grow the company without growing headcount and at the same pace, and augment a portion of that headcount by enabling people to do more knowledge work, it should mean that we would be able to be more profitable, and that means we pay all the individuals more, right? Because they're contributing at a higher level, and we're reducing some of those lower level tasks. And so I think like that one piece is a comforting aspect, especially for like growth minded employees, but people that want to grow with a company, or they see kind of the future of their career. If they're like, you know what, if I can find a way to do significantly more work or higher value work for the organization, and I'm okay offloading some of those lower value things, ultimately that makes me a significantly more valuable employee. And maybe that's one of the best ways for me to progress in an organization, is to try and find ways. And I think that one of the things, and I think what's cool about the employees, maybe moving faster than the company is, that's one of the cool things about getting folks in that are asking about AI or technology or automation or anything in general, is it just gets the conversation rolling. If you surround yourself with a bunch of people that are like, we'll deal with this later, then you're probably going to end up dealing with it later. But if you bringing people in that are hungry and curious and kind of pushing the boundaries, it's going to force the company to begin moving, So it's just interesting how the conversation has shifted, and how for the employee, there's actually the people that embrace it. Number one, I think their job satisfaction goes up because they're doing more of the stuff that they really enjoy, but then they also are adding significantly more value and can do so much more for the business. So their earning potential goes up. I know, like for us, that's the type of people we're trying to get inside of our company. We've got a ton of them. And that's kind of the end of the folks that we have. But
I think I was telling you, so this, in this board meeting I was in, we're in South Bend, Indiana. Company is headquartered in Idaho, and they have they're really intentional to have members of all their management team in the board meeting. And we're looking at some data up on the screen, and and we were asking some questions around it. And 3 or 4 members of the management team, they're like fighting over taking the data set, running it through one of their LLMs, and they're like, oh, we have the answer. No, it's this, and this. And it goes back to what you said, sort of that curiosity. And I think what we're seeing is organizations where you have a lot of people who have that curiosity and are aligned, and they're accelerators. They are moving super fast, and they're way out in front of, they might not be that far in front of the puck, but they are definitely way out in front of the pack. And then with, the other thing too that we see is, organizations really aren't doing a lot to train people around AI. If they're training, it's like basics. It's like, hey, we're going to train you how to use Copilot. And we're doing that. We're training how to use sort of basic and advanced on sort of existing tools. But what we see, it's really sometimes the employees are bringing the organization along because you have one or two, coworkers who will go out and self-teach, and they'll come back and say, hey, look at this, look what I can do.
Yeah, I got it figured out. We can do
like,
this.
I figured this out, and look at this. And then people are like, how did you do that?
Yeah.
And now it's like the company's like, can you do that again? Can you teach it? So where the company is, it's really sort of an inversion where the employees are sort of sometimes pulling the companies across the finish line, saying, hey, we got to move forward faster.
There was a situation occurring inside of our company where we've got one individual that I'm thinking about that is the most forward-leaning person. I mean, like, they'll stay up till 2:00 in the morning, testing, experimenting, just really kind of pushing the boundaries. And then there's another one that's a little bit more pragmatic as far as like some guardrails and everything. And, I think it kind of goes back to where you and I were talking about before, is that you've got to have the people that can provide some of the guardrails and the guidance, but you also have to have the people that are like super forward leaning to go figure it out, and sometimes they're going to need some guardrails, and sometimes the guardrail people are going to need some motivation. But the one comment that we brought up to this group was that we can't stymie that individual's curiosity, like, at all, because we want them and need them to be out there figuring this stuff out. And if we pull them back too hard, it's not going to curb their curiosity. They're just going to want to go somewhere else where they can explore their curiosity. And so it's like, let them run, let them experiment, let them play, but then pull them in as a part before we roll it out across the organization. So it's just, I agree, it's just moving so fast, but you need those really curious, excited people that are like, my CFO is like, yeah, we finished dinner the other day and I went and I built this whole dashboard, at night, and I was poking around on how to do X, Y, Z. And it's like, all right, love that, man. Like, love that. So
yeah, it's almost like you want to invert sort of the pyramid of the organization. The traditional pyramid is like that. You want to invert it and say, hey, you know what? Our frontline coworkers, our team that is interfacing with the customers, maybe who earlier in their career who are really using AI, you're like, hey, you're going to drive what we do, and you're going to sort of drive it, to the leadership, versus the leadership who's got, maybe more years of experience, maybe not as early adopters on technology, trying to set the strategy.
Yeah, 100%. Well, a couple of things as we kind of come down to the close here, John. First off, I've taken a bunch of notes, even though we record the sessions. But I love when you talked about like the little things. It's really how you do anything is how you do everything, or those little things describe that. We talked about learned, but it's also contagious. That was kind of those leadership moments. I love kind of building great companies and impacting lives. I mean, it's such cool stuff that you've talked about. So I've got 3 rapid fire questions for you. Okay. So just kind of thinking about this. So number 1, if you had to just like in a word or a couple words, like John Uprichard's kind of guiding principle for your life, what's like the number 1 thing that pops in your mind that you feel like you live by? It's who you are. It's where you're focused. It's kind of that North Star for you.
I think just number 1 is just treat people, the way that you want to be treated. And when I was, you mentioned earlier I was in the Navy, and I mean, I can remember, I'm 22 years old. I get sent overseas to a small island called Diego Garcia. It's in the middle of the Indian Ocean. It's actually a strategic asset for us. With the conflict with Iran, they actually sent ballistic missiles towards Diego Garcia. Fortunately, they didn't make it. 22 years old, leading 35 people, and I'm the youngest person. And so I had a senior chief who was great. He said, all right, treat them the way you want to be treated. And if you take great care of them, they will take great care of you. And he said, if you don't take great care of them, he said, they will not take great care of you, and you cannot be successful without them. And that's what really sort of really resonated, with me, is that, success is really less about, you as an individual, and it's really more about, the people around you and with you.
Love that, man. I love that. It's obviously, it comes out in the way that you lead. I've seen you around your people, and you're really focusing on their development and where they're going. And I love that, man. All right. Number two, what's one area that you want to develop in your life? Like what's the thing that you kind of that one thing that you just feel like you want to get better at, that over the next 5 to 10 years you're focused on?
So I would say sort of two is, so I'm going to sort of say time and pace. So that's sort of looking where I am. It's like, hey, so I'm 56. I hit, sort of, when you hit 50, you're like, okay, wait a second. I'm at best at halftime, but I'm probably in the third quarter.
Right.
And I think you start to think a little more about, where do I want to spend my time? And then also, what is the right pace that I need to be running at? Can I run at the same pace that I ran at when I was 35, 40 years old? Sometimes we think we can, but I think time and sort of pace. And then the other thing also is faith. For me is just, as I sort of think about my legacy with, especially as I got 4 adult kids, and it really comes back to, that legacy of faith and sort of instilling, faith in them. And, and it's how can I sort of, maybe preach the gospel to them, but without speaking, just sort of what they see, like you said, picking up the dirty paper towel on the floor, how do I preach that gospel to them without speaking?
Love that. Yeah, I don't know if you remember this, but there was I think one of the first times, I'm not going to say that I met you, but probably the first time that we sat down, we went over to the bagel shop on Lawrence Road for maybe lunch, or I don't know, it was coffee or lunch or something like that. And you were at a time, I think, when your kids were in high school and kind of middle school, high school, and I think you had some kids that played football. Is that right?
Yeah, football,
so
soccer.
Yeah. So you were talking about at that time, and I was probably pre-kids or maybe I just had a baby, whatever, or my wife had a baby, sorry. But I remember having that conversation with you, and you were talking about, spending the time, like getting to practice, going to the games, helping out. I remember your story about you and Stan had, you had met, being the chain gang at the
chain gang.
Yeah. And it's like, and that moment, I don't know that you realize, but that moment actually stuck with me because, as I think about my kids and just the time I'm spending with them, and look, man, you're busy, I'm busy. We all got a lot of stuff going on, but just being present, sometimes I criticize myself too much, thinking that I should be teaching them more lessons, or I should be like, whatever, but just the presence, being with them and being a good dude and trying to live my life the best that I can. I mean, so anyway, that was a moment that impacted me, man. I remember going back. I remember where we were sitting to, and where I was facing the window, you were facing the inner thing, and you had talked about how you were just there with your kids and being present and trying to obviously run a business and everything. I took that to heart. So I would imagine that your kids, if you just continue to do the right things, those 4 kids are going to continue seeing you, living your life in faith. And so just encourage you by that for what it's worth.
Cool. Thank you.
And then this actually might be the thing, but what are you most excited about? Like, the next couple of years of your life, 5 years of your life, 10 years, 15 years.
So,
what are you most excited about?
what excites me, I would say 2 things is, you spend a lot of time and you're like, trying to model, support, love your kids. And then as they become adult kids, what I'm excited is just to continue to watch them, sort of grow and just become really, great human beings. I think sometimes we define success sometimes for our kids based upon jobs and roles and stuff like that. But I'm like, hey, are they kind? Are they nice? Are they loving? And then also we got our first grandchild on the way.
Oh man, yeah.
In August, and so we're a little girl with our son Matthew and his wife Meredith, and our new daughter. So we're super excited about that. I don't think it's really hit us yet. I think as we get a little bit closer, it will. But yeah, we'll have a new member of the family at the end of August. So
It's
looking
awesome.
forward to being a grandparent, because everyone says, man, being a grandparent is incredible. So I'm ready.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, John, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you joining, man. Crazy cool conversation with you, and just kind of listening and learn a little bit more about you. And, every time I try and have guests, that, the whole show about building with purpose is people that are doing things for really the greater good of something beyond themselves. And it's no doubt that you're doing that. So, man, I just want to thank you for being a part of the show today, and always welcome back. It'd be great to come back a year from now and see how things are rolling over the past year. But thanks for joining, man.
Yeah. Hey, it's my pleasure. All right. Take care.
Okay, thanks for joining me on Built with Purpose. If you have enjoyed today's episode, subscribe, share, and leave us a review. It helps more bold leaders find the show. For resources and show notes, visit our website and connect with me, Chris Fay, on LinkedIn. Until next time, keep building great companies, cultures, and legacies with purpose.